Moving on to our next panel discussion, how we leverage alumni networks for the benefit of entrepreneurs. Focuses on the benefits of strong alumni network, which is the core foundation and philosophy of IvyCap Ventures. We will also talk about how the success of startups correlates with the alumni networking prowess of its founders. Please welcome our panelists, Mr. Pradeep Gupta, Chairman and Managing Director, Cyber Media Group, Ms. Paula Mariwala, Founder and Co-President, Stanford Angels and Entrepreneur India, Professor V. Ram Gopal Rao, former Director, IIT Delhi and Pillai Chair Professor, Professor Mahesh, Dean, Alumni and Corporate Relations, IIT Madras, and Professor Ali Contractor, former Dean, IIT Bombay. The panel will be moderated by Ms. Anju Gupta, President IvyCamp. Anju, over to you. Can we have a big round of applause for our panelists?
Hello.
Thank you to all our panelists and good afternoon, everybody. It's kind of interesting, this panel is following, our previous panel of successful entrepreneurs. And, there's a lot that goes to making an entrepreneur successful, funding, obviously, the passion, the team, little bit of luck, right time, right place. But, here we have a fabulous panel talking about, how it is that the alumni support is providing that edge. And I know our audience, both live and virtual, is from across professions. So for this panel, I'd like you to wear your common hat because everybody here is an alumni of some institution. So wearing that hat, I'd like to jump right into it. One question I'd like to start with all our panelists, and maybe Professor Rao, you could start. Today, what do you think is that edge that an alumni can give to an entrepreneur to help him or her be successful?
I think, I was at IIT Bombay for almost 18 years. About 6 years ago, I moved to IIT Delhi. And one thing I noticed after reaching IIT Delhi was, we did a survey and all that among the students. Every second student on the campus wants to become an entrepreneur. Every second student. They don't want to work for anybody anymore. I think that is one change that has happened on our campuses. And I also figured out that 1/3 of all the unicorn founders in India have actually come out of IIT Delhi. So Sachin, you name many a unicorn founder, you will find an IIT Delhi connection there. I think putting these two things together, we launched this Endowment Fund, and then we started connecting alumni, the successful alumni with the students on the campus. And it's not just about giving back, but I would think it's the mentorship, which also matters a lot. And when they give money, they have a higher stake in the entire campus functioning and all of that. So we have a nice endowment board. In fact, Vikram Gupta is here, who played a very important role. If you have not seen IIT Delhi endowment song, if you just go to YouTube, search IIT Delhi endowment song and just listen to that. A phenomenal kind of an experience. I have seen students listening to that song and crying in front of me. That made a big difference now. So we launched it in a Bollywood style. And now, in the last 3 years, we have actually raised more money at IIT Delhi than the previous 57 years. So that's a kind of a fast path that we are on right now. I think the startups are now acting as a bridge between the institutes and the alumni. So.
Professor Mahesh?
I think I want to first frame the alumni ecosystem with some numbers. I think these numbers are IITM numbers, but representative of most institutions. We have 53,725 alumni as of July, spread in at least 83 countries that I know. About 35,000 of them are in India, about 11,000 in North America. The remaining are in the rest of the countries, significant fraction of them in Singapore and Europe. Now let's come to your question. There is a budding entrepreneur student somewhere in a campus, and that person is empowered to first know that there is this network, and to reach out to this network with practically no introduction. The introduction is, hi, I am a 1992 mechanical engineering Ganga hostel. That's enough. You don't need to say one more word beyond to introduce yourself. That having that kind of an extremely successful extended family is something we all are still learning how to take advantage of. Now, at IIT Madras, I'll say two things where this big network has really made a big difference. One is the entire deep tech ecosystem, innovation ecosystem with the IIT Madras Research Park, the incubation cell with over 250 startups. All of that was kick-started with a couple of million, small in numbers, but a couple of million of unencumbered money from alumni. So what this money did is successfully set up a virtuous cycle at IIT that helped it grow. The second benefit that an alumni ecosystem does is, like I said, because there is no introduction needed, you can actually go talk to a VC in the community and get friendly advice. Now, how many friendly VCs are there in this audience when it comes to founders and co-founders? It's like, you want to bargain, you want to be a friend, I'm a friend, but when it comes to bargain is a bargain. Right? I think in this case, that's the biggest difference. Students get friendly fire advice from alumni, and that's made a big difference to the overall innovation ecosystem at IIT.
Professor Contractor, your thoughts?
Yeah. So, if I look back to my own experience as a student and now, I think entrepreneurship was not really a nice word when I was a student. What the IIT, entrepreneurs have done is, they have changed the whole mindset. As Ram Gopal was saying, 1 in 2 want to become an entrepreneur. Sometimes, they have no clue as to what it means, but it has changed the whole image of what entrepreneurship means, that it can bring value to the institute, it can bring value to the system, value to society, and of course, it should be profitable to, do anyone any good. So I think that is what our, first generation of entrepreneurs, people like Ashank, etc., have done, that they have made it respectable and people want to be entrepreneurs now.
Absolutely.
And in my time, they would have wanted to become professors or something like that,
Very
so
true.
there has been a change, yeah.
That's a great point. Ms. Mariwal, let me move to you, taking like a different perspective, from Stanford. Love to hear your thoughts on, where you see Stanford alumni, have really made a difference to entrepreneurs. I mean, beyond just the usual Silicon Valley.
Sure. So, great to hear from, our own ecosystem. And let me start by saying, as an investor, I've invested in companies which I picked up from Sign, IIT Bombay Incubator, IIT Madras Incubator, as well as IIT Delhi. So I think clearly we can see that they are already doing a good service to us investors. Stanford, of course, is known for entrepreneurship. We have the whole Silicon Valley, and the alumni network is extremely strong, simply because of the value that and the experiences that one brings, because of the exposure that you get as student at university like Stanford. I think, like it was said, as alumni, there is a trust. There is an inherent trust. So you don't have to invest in forming that trust, whether it is as an investor group or as a mentor-mentee or as peer learning from entrepreneurs. So with that construct, it really is a very, very strong enabler for all aspects of the ecosystem. So, for example, at Stanford Angels, we call ourselves Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs. We have groups across the world. India was the first group actually outside the valley that we started. And what we bring here is that we are, of course, we want to invest in good companies of all kinds of founders. We want definitely to invest in Stanford alumni, but we are a group of alumni who want to invest in the ecosystem. And by investing, when you invest as a group, there is always, I think there was talk about who's on your cap table, and angels being on cap table sometimes scare VCs. Here, when we invest as a group, which brings in value because of inherent trust that we have, the kind of exposure and experiences and connects that we bring. So it's a collective multiplier impact that we bring as a group. And that's been extremely beneficial when we invest in companies. when we mentor our own entrepreneurs or our own portfolio. So I think it's any alumni group can bring this collective multiplier effect, which you will not find in groups or even in VCs. You know, some of them may be friendly.
Yeah.
I don't think all are unfriendly, but some you will find much more friendly groups if they're alumni.
Yeah, totally agree. Mr. Gupta, let me ask you a slightly different version of that question. Being an entrepreneur yourself, like what support did you get or want, from your alumni? Did that happen? And what are you seeing kind of today, like in your experience, that alumni can provide?
Sure. So, the alumni network is a very, very powerful tool. Okay. But it's, in an Indian context, I think so far it has been like the iceberg. We have probably utilized only 10% of that network. 90% of that network has not really been realized. So, IITs, IIMs are taking multiple steps towards addressing that particular issue. But many more structures need to be created to ensure that we can actually leverage the full power of that particular network. So, Professor Rao and Professor Mahesh both referred to the IIT Delhi and the IIM Madras network. The unicorns from IIT Delhi, for example, did not go through a formal or an informal alumni process.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think Sign also would have a similar kind of a thing, Professor Contractor. So I think we need to create all of those things. Now, as far as your question about, was it beneficial as far as I'm concerned when I started my entrepreneur journey? So I am an entrepreneur of a different era. Okay?
I know, exactly.
So the era that Professor Contractor was referring to, where entrepreneurship was a bad word, so became an entrepreneur in the early 80s. So at that particular time, the big benefit that I got from the alumni network was in terms of the team. So my critical team all came from people who were alumni and so on, whether it was when the magazine started, DataQuest, the first editor, Sunil Agarwal, was IIT Delhi, and then after that, Shyam Malhotra was IIT Delhi, and so on. So the key people who took part in that journey were people I knew out of the campus corridors.
So, we talk about the power of the global alumni network, and like you correctly mentioned, there's so much more that can be done. So I guess Ms. Mariwala and Professor Mahesh would like to start with you. How can we really kind of use this global network? IITs are all over the world, Stanford alumni over the world. I mean, an example is, what's happening in India. But it seems to be very kind of localized, the local chapters. Your thoughts on how we can really kind of use this global alumni? How can an entrepreneur sitting in India reach out to an alumni or really leverage that network? Would love to hear, your thoughts on that, starting with you.
No, I think it's a very powerful way to really connect. So we, for example, have opened up our, a company wants to start in the Bay Area or even in Singapore. We can immediately open up our network through organized chapters. And Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, now we have got actually chapters in Brazil, Singapore, London, various parts of US, as well as India, of course. And there are three major ways in which this can help. Very important thing is to get the team. And when it's a Stanford alum founder, it's very easy to attract talent from the network anywhere. It's also very easy to get access into the networks in geographies that you may not have access to or understanding of. And this, again, because of the trust, it goes well. I think the key thing is, you have to have some sort of, an organized, because it's after all a social network. We are not an angel fund. For example, if I tell about Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, we are an association of people. We are not a fund. We are not even an angel group where there is a fee or a carry. It's a social group, but built with tremendous value-added incentives.
Okay.
And that's what works. So you must have some sort of a structure which can, so it doesn't go off as a social chatter and then you only talk about the times you had at Stanford or at your campus, but it goes on to build something out of it. And I find that if you have a layer in between, which is sort of connecting all this, saying, okay, we are here to serve entrepreneurs and also other people in the ecosystem like investors, it's very clear that you decide where you want to be. We have mentors, for example, from the Bay Area, mentoring companies in India, even when they're not investors in the Indian company. So that is the kind of connect leadership and actually the dividend you can reap.
Yeah.
But I would strongly advise, and to the point that was made that we have not even tapped 10%.
Yeah.
I think it's because, and it's a journey. Initially, you have to form a social sort of a connect. Then maybe there's fundraising, development, and then you have to go beyond.
Yeah.
So for example, as you know, Stanford has several incubators which are for alumni. There's StartX, there is Basis, there are so many.
Yeah.
So already there is a culture of tapping into alumni, or for current students, alumni, various other stakeholders of the community. So I think that one has to go beyond just fundraising and social and say, listen, how do we leverage this further so it's a value added for everybody?
Yeah.
And I think that is where we need to see a lot of networks go towards.
Professor Mahesh, would love to hear some specific examples of, how even, at the IITM Research Park, it's been very successful, lots of good startups coming out there. How are alumni how are you working with the alumni? And what more would you want from them?
I think the network, as I said, is a very powerful network, but as PG mentioned, it's quite dormant. I think a platform like LinkedIn is what I have found to be a very sort of usable and ground level accessible to a lot of people. Say, I'm going to go to the next level detail. Let's say you can actually search by school, by keywords and location, and actually locate a small group of alumni who you think can provide you that unfair advantage in your entrepreneur journey. And then the next step that we have enabled is that they can reach out to us. We're trying to create a sort of an entity we have loosely called the Founders Club, that any IITM alumnus who wants to be a founder, co-founder, has actually turned a founder, co-founder, can reach out to the Founders Club, which is part of my office, and request connect with this group of alumni.
Okay.
We could do the research as well, but the research is best done by the founders, co-founders.
Yeah.
But then the conversation can go in any direction that is mutually beneficial to them. In most cases, it is beneficial to the founder. The alumnus may just be a mentor, well-wisher, which is perfectly all right.
Yeah.
Even this day, if I look at actually on ground, the research park companies, what has the alumni network done to those companies? I go back to PG's experience. They are able to dip into the alumni pool for their employee number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even today, that is the best value proposition. Other than, of course, angel funding, which happens to sort of happen on the side. But the biggest benefit is a young alumnus who graduates today, 2021 graduate, can come back, recruit a 2023, 24 graduate as their employee number 4, 5, 6, which is a phenomenal benefit. The presence of these startups in the research park is actually a very nice proposition for the founders, because it's a place that is right next door to IIT. Students can go there and intern. So if I get a dozen students as interns, let's assume I'm a founder, I get a dozen students as interns, chances are when they graduate, they aren't going to look very far for a job.
True.
And that has been our experience with the way the research park has helped the IITM entrepreneurship ecosystem on the student and faculty side. Out of the 230 startups in our incubator, about half are faculty student startups built on patents that were developed at IIT Madras. And so you can clearly see the faculty member has his or her research group, the student has his or her hostel network. And so this becomes a good pool of ideas and people.
Absolutely.
I want to close by making one point, that every alumni network is only as strong as a small group of alumni who make it their daily pursuit to energize this alumni network.
Absolutely.
And I want to reiterate what Rao said about Vikram, Now, what he has done for the IIT Delhi alumni network is phenomenal. We are also grateful for our own Vikrams in our network. But my point is, every one of you should become a Vikram for your alumni network. This is an extremely important piece of the puzzle. That's the only way you can provide an unfair advantage to your fellow alumni and alumni.
So great point, and I totally agree. Professor Rao, in addition to Vikram, you mentioned so many unicorns have come out of IIT Delhi. What do you want them to do in addition to what they're already doing to help entrepreneurs? What more could they be doing beyond what they're doing right now? Go deeper than that tip of the iceberg.
No, I think one thing that is now happening at IIT Delhi is, of course, many of them are giving back money to the institute. In fact, Binny Bansal still happens to be our largest donor. He has committed 100 crores to IIT Delhi, the Flipkart founder, one of the Flipkart founders. And there are many alumni now who have joined hands with him. And another thing which is also happening is creation of centers of excellence on the campus, funded by the alumni in their areas of interest. For example, there are alumni in Delhi who thought, why should Delhi air be so bad? So what can we do as an institute, as alumni, to help improve the air quality problem? So we have now a very well-functioning center of excellence for research on clean air, created by Arun Dugal. And similarly, one of our unicorn founders, Suman Sinha, the Renew Power, there is a Renew Power Center of Excellence on the campus. Now he is connected with lots of faculty and students on the campus, and there are many more such initiatives. The last one we had was a $10 million donation by one of our alumni, Anant ARD, for a school of AI. So I think through these initiatives, they are now investing in areas where they want to see IIT evolve as a solution provider. I think that's one change that I see is happening now. More and more such centers of excellence are happening. And I think that is one connect that we also want to have, because when alumni are funding that, of course, their passion comes to play. Yeah. And secondly, they also, want to help the institute in some way. So it is all those elements coming together. Some of these centers now have become very active centers on the campus, bringing faculty, students together. And I think sooner or later, many of these centers of excellence, like what Professor Mahesh mentioned, I think the startups now, the technology startups, the deep tech startups are now beginning to happen. For the first time, we had a huge cultural problem. We had a problem seeing Lakshmi and Saraswati together in this country. And thanks to all these startups now, and thanks to people making money on an IIT campus, I think, now that at least that barrier is gone. Now we don't see anybody as wrong. If a professor has a startup and doing very well, now the professor is respected. And earlier there would have been issues for that professor during Professor Contractor's time. I think that is one change in culture that has taken place now. I think another 3 to 5 years, you will see many of these startups now becoming unicorns, because I think that some of these initial product unicorns probably might come out of the IIT system.
Professor Contractor, from a sign perspective.
I can to just take off on what Professor Rao said. I had a startup, and when I first got admitted to sign, I met one of our senior professors on the corridor, and he said, "Ali, ye kya sun raha hu? Ki tum company start kar rahe ho?" As if I was about to commit a crime. But I think things have changed, and he also then later on, after a few years, started a company in Sign. So Sign has been a good environment. But ultimately, this entrepreneurship promotion is a full-time job.
Absolutely.
And in the IIT system, almost all units have to be headed by professors. And apart from the fact that they may not be totally aligned to the aims of this organization, they really don't have the time and the bandwidth also. So I think that is something which also IITs need to look at. I think slowly, with pressure from the government as far as the money is concerned, maybe IITs will will involve alumni in a bigger way in various projects. So for example, IIT Bombay recently hostel renovation. A lot of the renovation was done by alumni of those hostels without going through the institute machinery.
I see.
So the Alumni Association, of course, plays an important role.
Yeah.
So there are lots of ways in which alumni can engage. For example, we have the Entrepreneurship Center, Desai Sethi Entrepreneurship Center, which offers courses on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
The key, resource persons for that are IIT alumni entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So, and they can come back and teach in these centers, set up these micro factories, as I was mentioning to you earlier, in hostels where students can try out their ideas, and then if they succeed, then go to at the institute level, proof of concept and things like that. But I think this engagement with students
it's
is
a question
very
of
important.
How do you
students have to see the entrepreneurs who have actually done something and talk to them, and so the entrepreneurs have to really spare time.
Yes.
Of course, the institutes want their money, but I think the time is also very important.
I think that's a really important point. I mean, time is really more valuable than, anything else that you can do. PJ, I want to ask you one question. I mean, because you have brought this up also in your fireside this morning. Women entrepreneurs. IITs typically, I mean, I'm glad to say we've seen a lot of change in more women coming out of the IITs. What can alumni, just focusing on the IITs, do to encourage, to support more women entrepreneurs?
One, of course, is the point that Mr. Kamath was making in the morning, that the pool needs to be adequate, right? And today that ratio has changed.
Yes.
I mean, in my time, we were 250 guys and there were 0 girls, right? So that was the composition at that time. Now I believe it is probably about 15-20% women. So, once the pool changes, things will change. Let me just also address one question that you had raised, that, what are some of the good examples where leverage of alumni networks have happened. And I think Ivy itself is an excellent example, where the entire investment thesis was based upon the fact that we will be looking at India's Ivy League colleges. And, that is where we will be actually searching for, our pipeline.
Yeah.
Then once the pipeline gets converted into investments, then we look at those investments and connect it with other alumni through the mentoring platform that we created. And using that, we will again leverage the alumni network.
Yeah.
And then after that, in terms of, creating that network, in terms of connecting them with the company, and again, it is the same alumni network that starts getting leveraged, and next round funding and so on. And then the loop gets closed because you have a give back also, which means that once the carry is there, a certain percentage of that goes back to the IITs.
Correct.
Right? So this itself is a very, very successful example. And this year, when we are talking of 2,000 crores, 400 crores is coming from the IIT alumni network. So you can see the power of this particular network. But now let me look at a student who is in the IIT.
Yeah.
Can there be a similar stack for him? That suppose I'm thinking about entrepreneurship, can I have role models coming and can I get inspired and say, okay, I'm going to become an entrepreneur? Once that is there, can I have something where I can do tinkering and I can convert that idea that I have into something on the ground? Then from that, you have those labs which are there. Can I actually convert that into a POC? Once I have a POC, and at each stages, can I have different kind of perhaps grants, mentoring support, different kind of stuff which can be there. And so therefore, can there be a stack which can be created at the institutes as well? I think that is the next transition that has happened. that should happen.
That should happen.
So far it has happened in the sense that incubators have been established.
Correct.
Right? But you can make a complete stack and going right up till the early stage funding.
Yeah.
And if an IIT or an IIM startup has become a unicorn, why can't it now become a global company? Because we have our guys, I mean, there are so many alumni who are today sitting on top of global companies.
Global companies, absolutely.
So that is the kind of a full stack, and that will leverage the whole power of this entire alumni network.
No, great
And
great
that
point.
will then result into the third part, which is the giving back also to the... Because people feel that they have a debt that they owe to their alma maters.
Yeah.
So that becomes the third piece, the one where you actually then start giving back to the alumni.
Absolutely.
So I think
It's
that
coming
is
back full
the
circle.
kind of a future scenario that I think over the next few decades should unfurl.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Ms. Mariwala, like any thoughts, like what have you seen at Stanford, at alumni, especially to encourage women entrepreneurs?
Yeah. No, of course, it's a cause very close to my heart, and I'm doing several things besides just the Stanford Alumni Network to promote much more of women.
Yeah.
I always say last 15 years that I've been a VC, I can remember every woman who has pitched to me simply because there have been such few.
Yeah.
Not because of anything else. So definitely we need to do much more, and we have to increase the number of women in the investor community as well as in the founding community. And this goes back to, very socio-cultural issues of increasing, their presence in several of our institutions, in corporates and so on. So it's a fundamental issue. But how do we leverage an alumni network towards this? Women do need, I was never a believer that you need to sort of help any particular group, but I think it's a fact. Let's look at numbers.
Yeah.
So what an alumni group can do, for example, is to provide a very good ecosystem of enabling environment by providing mentorship, by providing, like I said, the trust comes easily, so you don't have to be intimidated while going. We have lots of investors in our network. So it can be a much more of a friendly exchange to start with, to break that barrier, to get them forward. And we make a strong appeal for women to come forward. We also, unlike the IITs, even in the US, we are very few. The founders as well as investors. Yeah. There is a similar sort of numbers. I think it's, again, we try to bring the multiply effect. Let's amplify the women entrepreneurs and investors who can get the message out. And it has to be very, it has to be driven, again, by a group of people who believe in this. Absolutely. And you have to be committed. I want to address some of the things that, Pradeep mentioned. Wearing an investor hat. I think for example, Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, our goal is not just to sort of promote our own alumni, but to give back to the startup ecosystem. Because of what we have learned in our experiences on our campus and other experiences that we've had. So what we want to do is to connect with entrepreneurs and share what we have learned and create a much more of an enabling environment, much more of a give it an impetus. Yeah. I think that we deserve, and we are seeing a huge change. I'll give you a small example of an entrepreneur who was not a Stanford alum, but whom we had invested, because we invest in all kinds of entrepreneurs in India. And he had learned, he was from a small engineering college. He was not from the Ivies, any of the IITs, but he was a very bright guy. He's a unicorn today. But he had learned everything online from a particular professor at Stanford. Okay. And he really wanted to meet him. And we were able to do that for him. And he gave us special rights, which he had not given. And today, as a unicorn, also he talks to us. So it's something small. Okay. We also could open doors for him and his group. And we also insist then, if we have a good equation with the founding team, to make sure that they do hire women founders, women employees, and sort of connect more with different types of ecosystems as well. And we push them in that direction. So I think one can play a very good role. Yeah. And like it was said, you do need a group of committed, alumni who take up a particular cause
Yeah.
and push for it. And one can really see strong impact with that.
Yeah. Please go ahead, Professor.
On the women entrepreneurship, I wanted to add, about 4 years ago, we started a program at IIT Delhi called WEE,
Yeah, correct.
the Women Entrepreneurship and Empowerment.
Yeah.
Now that has picked up very well. In fact, many embassies in Delhi have joined hands with them. They are providing them support.
Okay.
DST is also giving them funding. So now from a small program, it has evolved into a national level movement. And every 6 months, they conduct those programs.
Okay.
And I think it's also run by alumni. IIT Delhi alumni have come forward,
Yeah.
started that. Institute supported them in all possible ways. Now there are many more players, supporting them.
Yeah.
It's really doing very well. I think we need more such programs probably in the country. So.
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting, among the panel, two things coming out again and again. One is kind of the sense of give back. I think that's really what the power is of the alumni, because there's this feeling, for lack of a better word, of giving back, which really causes the alumni to give back and to engage. And it's interesting, a few people have used that term multiplier effect. And some of you may recall that, our last IvyCap day, we were talking exactly about kind of the multiplier effect among alumni and everything else. So, that continues to be kind of powerful. One more question I want to get from everybody, given that you are addressing an audience live and online of alumni, and I'll start with you, PG. What would you ask these alumni to do that's practical to do now to help entrepreneurs? If everybody there hopefully would be willing to raise their hand and ask us what we can do, what would you ask your audience to do to help?
So, as everyone in the panel has said, that the moment you are the alumni of the same institute, you have a shared culture, a shared value, and so on, and a sort of a trust that is automatically there, right? And all of us, therefore, would be willing always, if somebody just walks up to me and says, hey, I'm from IIT Delhi, I'll say, yeah, sure, what is it that I can do for you?
Yeah, because you're saying tip of the iceberg. How do we go deeper than that iceberg?
So that kind of a thing is already there. I think for going beyond that, and if it is a message for people sitting in the audience, then I would reiterate what was said earlier, that you need to pick it up just as Vikram picked it up for IIT Delhi. Similar to that, you need to say that this is what I will do for my college, and go back and start looking at creation of either a support system for entrepreneurs from your institute, a support system for the institute, and so on.
Just so that everybody knows, I have everybody's emails. So after this, just say, like this event, everybody is given tasks. Every alumni is going to get a task to do. Just warning everyone.
And I would just like to add one more thing. People can contribute in several manners. So it's not just that you contribute in terms of money.
Absolutely.
You can contribute in terms of your time. You can
connections,
the various network which is there. You can be part of the education part of the entire institute. So there are several ways in which people can actually engage.
So one way.
Today it's much easier to connect and take any initiative forward because of the tools we have available. So it's very easy to connect global groups. LinkedIn is one. I mean, there are all kinds of WhatsApp groups. There's so many tools available. It's extremely easy to start it and get people on board. Then you need a committed core group which will take this forward. It's important to articulate what you expect, because people have shortage of time. People are parts of too many groups anyway. So I think if there's a group which articulates, we are forming this group, for example, like I said, in Stanford Angels and Entrepreneurs, we want to give back to the startup ecosystem what we've been privileged to learn or experience. And that's a simple enough goal. Then there is an investor group, and we've got, in just the India chapter, we have 45 companies we've invested in. The other thing one can do is to collaborate with other groups like ours. So for example, we have invested alongside with BITS Pilani Angels, I am Calcutta Angels, Harvard Angels, and it brings, you learn a lot from each other, you open up each other's networks, and because we are sort of operating in a similar way, it's easy to understand and there is no conflict. You're not competing, whereas there are two angel groups come in, there's some sort of a competition. Collaboration is something one can really promote with alumni groups, because there is only the sense of giving back and value addition.
Absolutely.
But Paula, I really liked what you said. Start with a WhatsApp group. Decide what you want to do and start with a WhatsApp group.
This is India. We have a number of WhatsApp groups, but let's pick and choose how we want to take it forward.
Great. Professor Rao?
Yeah, I think, I recently posted the financial model of IITs, which applies to Delhi, Bombay, all the IITs that way. The fee component of our revenues is about 5 to 6%. Just 5 to 6% of our revenue comes from the fee. And if you have graduated earlier, you wouldn't have even paid any fee. I mean, that time it would have been 1 to 2%, right? And so whenever I went to alumni asking for money, and there were two concerns. One concern was, you are Ambani's kind of a thing. You are already rich. Why do you need money? That was what one of the alumni told me. I said, we are Ambani's, but we are not Mukesh Ambani. We are Anil Ambani. So that was that. So we need now somebody to support us. And that was, and then we actually, IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, IIT Delhi are paying back 650 crore loan today. While institutions abroad are building endowments, IITs have a loan of 600 crores now to pay back to the government. Okay. That is the current financial situation of these institutes now. I think, IIT brand is too precious to be left to bureaucrats. The alumni need to take charge of IIT brand. Alumni need to connect with these institutions. The money now, we have also ring-fenced this money. In fact, IIT Delhi Endowment Fund, we have all the approvals from Government of India. Same applies to Madras and other institutions now. All the money is ring-fenced. Nobody will take away your money. I think if you have still not given money to your alma mater, I think you should just be living with that guilty consciousness, and nobody can do anything about it, because all these processes are now in place, and now is the time to give back, take ownership of these institutions, form these endowment boards, run these institutions, and become alumni-run kind of institutions, and take them to Harvard's and Stanford's kind of a level. I think time has come for this country, for all of us to get engaged with our alma mater.
Absolutely.
So I want to pick up on what PG said earlier about creating this full stack entrepreneurship ecosystem. I think at IIT Madras over the last decade or so, we've been fortunate to sort of have pieces of the puzzle fall in place and then deliberately put the other pieces. For example, we have a tinkering lab called the Center for Innovation. That's a place where students come to, sort of tinker with their ideas and learn skills. When they get serious, there's a pre-incubator called Nirman. Then when they become serious, even there, they go to a Gopal Krishnan Deshpande Center, funded by Chris and Desh, to learn the ropes of entrepreneurship, business planning, product market fit, first customer approaching, etc. And then when they are serious, they go become an incubated company, and then there's an angel investor ecosystem. All of this has been created by alumni funding. My class of 1992, when we came together for our Silver Jubilee, helped create Nirman, the pre-incubator. The class of 1981, when they came for their Silver Jubilee, created the Center for Innovation. So the entire full stack that you're talking about was created fully by alumni support. Alumni money, alumni time, and alumni talent. So the message to you, and we are all professors here, Professor Rao, Ali, and myself, we love giving homework. Okay, and this is your homework. Please go back to your alma mater. Find the one piece of the puzzle that you feel passionate to create. Work with your classmates and get started in that process. That's all it takes. It's a very easy process. Once you get started, you will see that you will create a movement by yourself. It's as simple as that. Institutions can help catalyze it. We have a good database. Your alma mater will have a reasonably good database wherever they are.
Yeah.
They can help catalyze these efforts. I want to I want to add to what Professor Rao said about why you should really pay back. He invoked guilt. I will invoke greed. There are two ways of graduating from a Stanford. One is like Paula, work hard, get into a Stanford and graduate from a Stanford. The second is get into a good institution like an IIT. And then later on, work to make IIT the Stanford of India or a Stanford-like institution. Your resume will say, I graduated from the best institution in the world. Whether it whether you entered a Stanford and graduated from it, or you made your alma mater one of the best in the world, doesn't count. After you graduated, you are an alumnus of the best institution in the world. So please work with your institutions and help them become relevant and important in the global context. Most of our institutions are good in the Indian context, but we need to become relevant and important and noticed in the global context. And this alumni network is extremely important to make that happen.
Thank you.
Let me say most of the Stanford alums, a lot of us do come from some of the
IITs as well.
Yeah.
Professor Contractor. last thoughts.
if you look at all the various models of give back, etc., which exist in the IITs, I mean, they have all come from alumni initiative.
Yeah.
Not just alumni money, but also alumni initiative in the sense ideas, etc. So I think alumni are not short of ideas. These are entrepreneurs, innovators. They should come up with new ideas, new ways of giving back to the institute. What is required is for them to come back to their institute, spend some time. Spend some time with the students and see where they can, participate in, raising the level and things like that.
Please, sir. Can you give him?
And Ashank has done so much for both the IIT Bombay as well as the IIM Ahmedabad.
No, not about that.
Institute.
I agree with all these bright, insightful ideas anyway. I have a simple formula. See, everybody says, how much should I give? What should I do? Somebody has given crores, I can't do that. I say, don't worry, all that. Just do a simple calculation. For every day you have passed out of your institute, 1 day of your time or your money or your salary, give it. So suppose I have passed out after 25 years ago, give 25 days. And I did that calculation for IIT Bombay. And I said even 10% of people do this, that they give 1 day's salary or 1 day's time. It is such a huge amount. It's thousands of crores. So imagine what we are sitting on. So I have a simple formula, just 1 day for every day you have passed out, to all of alums. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I hope everybody has their homework now. Thank you all for such a great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for such an intriguing discussion and for the amazing formula. Can we have a photograph also, please? I'm sure everyone here would have been reminded of their education days after getting some homework from Professor Mahesh. Yeah, let's have a group photograph. Anju, request you to hand over the token of appreciation.